What is going on, everyone? Joe Anklem here, going to be doing a quick reaction video to The Ugly Truth About Getting Shredded, Science Explained by Jeff Nippert. I'm just going to be doing a reaction to it. I started watching the first couple minutes here, and I wanted to give my thoughts throughout the video just because I think this is a great topic, and I think Jeff's Science Explained series is a great series, and he does a great job with it, and I think this topic is something that my audience specifically, as well as just the general public, can definitely benefit from hearing more on. So let's get right into it here.
This is a clip of me posing at the leanest I've ever been. It was taken just a few weeks out from the California Natural Muscle Mayhem, where I won the lightweight class, the overall, and earned my pro card in natural bodybuilding.
I think this is interesting right off the bat because I don't think a lot of people know, especially if you just started following Jeff within the last couple of years, that he even competed in natural bodybuilding. When I first got in the fitness industry about 8 years ago, Jeff was one of the first content creators that I found that was a natural athlete and really promoting how to lose body fat, build muscle, and really led me to finding guys like the 3D Muscle Journey team, Alberto Nunez, Eric Helms, guys like Matt Ogus, and really Jeff was one of the first people that I had found and came across even way back then. And again, a lot of people don't even know that he competed in the natural bodybuilding world. And he won the Muscle Mayhem, which if you're not familiar with natural bodybuilding, that's one of the most prestigious natural shows that you can win, and very well known, even to this day.
Now, keep in mind, this footage was shot on an iPhone 5S, so it doesn't capture the best detail, but here are a few progress photos from the same time frame at the same level of leanness. Now, the weird thing about this is that I do think that this level of leanness looks pretty cool, and I can't understand why so many people have a goal of not just getting lean, but getting shredded and then staying shredded. A lot of people see fitness in.
This is like one of the biggest things I think is driving people to want to get shredded, and that's just seeing other people who are shredded. And I think social media really exacerbates this to a fault, as he's referring to here.
Influencers maintaining the shredded physique year round and then set the same goal for themselves without realizing the dark side of it all. So in this video, I'm going to lay out 3 harsh realities that come alongside being shredded and then explain a better, more practical approach to getting and maintaining the physique you want. The first harsh reality is that when you get shredded, you will look your biggest and leanest under good lighting and when flexing or lifting, especially if you have a good camera. However, you'll most likely look your smallest and most depleted for the other 23 hours of the day.
I think that that is very interesting and a great point because in the natural world, that's kind of a joke where a lot of people will see you in a t-shirt and you might be getting really lean for the stage or just getting lean in general. And people are like, are you getting sick? Like, is there something wrong with you? And, you know, for the other 2 hours when you are in the gym, you're looking just absolutely shredded and people are looking at you like you're some sort of a freak while you are in the gym, but outside of the gym, to the average person, you're just like drowning in your clothes.
In this posing footage, I'm only 150 pounds, or 68 kilos, at 5'5" tall. And while I do think I look more jacked here than usual, I looked much less jacked than usual just walking around.
I think that's a very good point as well, because I feel like a lot of people in the natural world are very lean and they're pretty light when they do get to that level of leanness. And I think most people, I've had people say to me that they think I'm 180 pounds or 190 pounds, like, you know, 30, 40, 50 pounds heavier than what I actually weigh because of the visual illusion that being lean really gives you and appears that you're bigger, even though you're not really as big as you might appear in certain angles with a pump, lighting, etc.
And this is where the so-called natty triangle comes in. Most people get to pick 2. You can be shredded and natural, but you won't be big, or you can be big and natural, but you won't be shredded, or you can be big and shredded, but you won't be natural. Now, obviously, there will always be a handful of freaks with 1 in a million genetics who can be all 3 at once, but for the rest of us,
I don't think that gets enough discussion, especially in the general population. Like most people would be completely okay with admitting that you could work as hard as you want, but you'd probably never be able to beat someone like LeBron James or Michael Jordan in a one-on-one basketball game because they're just genetically more gifted than the average person when it comes to basketball, right? Even if you're working at it really hard. The same thing can be said for any sport, and specifically also bodybuilding or physique sports, where there's going to be the freaks who just look at the weight room and they build muscle and they're able to stay lean all the time. That's not very common, but there's definitely more people out there who can maintain a leaner physique and also be putting on muscle mass at the same time. that kind of gives a very it gives an unrealistic perspective often, especially in the world of social media, where those genetic freaks are usually the people who are getting the most likes, have the most followers because of their ability to stay lean for such an extended period of time, or pretty much all the time.
We get to pick two. The second harsh reality is that you may look like you're in your best shape ever, but still not be any happier with the way you look. That's because body dysmorphia is exacerbated at very low body fats. In almost everyone I've ever coached, confidence and body image improve as they get leaner, but only up to a point. Most often, once they get past the so-called beach lean stage and start pushing into shredded territory, a switch flips in their brain and they can no longer see their physique objectively. They start
I think this is really important. This is something I really tried to stress to my clients, that there's basically an extreme on both ends of the spectrum, right? Where you don't need to, you don't want to be pushing yourself to an unneeded level of body fat ever. And if you are at an unneeded level of body fat, obviously from a health standpoint, you want to move yourself into that more healthy zone. But when it comes to even the other end of the spectrum, you can definitely have goals of wanting to get leaner and wanting to show more of the muscle you've built and push yourself in a positive way there. But at a certain point, there's a drawback as well when it comes to getting lean. And there's a tipping point, and where it starts to not be a positive, but it's actually a negative when it comes to both mental and physical quality of life.
start noticing every little bit of fat on their body and get very critical about how they look. And it's only after the diet is over and they look back on their old progress photos that they think, wow, I did not realize that I was actually that lean. And this is a shame because people work so hard to attain a certain look that they don't even appreciate once they get there. And then the third harsh reality is that being shredded comes with unhealthy side effects, even as a natural. This 2013 case study followed a natural male bodybuilder through 26 weeks, so just about 6 months of dieting. And in that time frame, he lost 30 pounds total and went from 14.8% body fat all the way down to 4.5% body fat measured by DEXA. And this is what he looked like on stage at the end of the diet, where you can see visible glute striations, no low back fat, feathered delts, and so on. And while he placed well at the show, his hormones took a huge hit. His testosterone levels dropped to a quarter of what they were at baseline. So he went from a very high 922 nanograms per deciliter, about as high as you tend to see in a natural lifter, all the way down to a clinically low level of 227 nanograms per deciliter, which would still count as low for someone in their 80s or 90s. We can also see that his ghrelin went up and his leptin went down, meaning he must have felt super hungry all the time. His cortisol also skyrocketed, doubling throughout the diet, and this was reflected in his total mood disturbance, which increased by 617% throughout the diet. Severe sleep interruption is another extremely common side effect, which can be very frustrating. Essentially, your body's doing everything in its power to tell you to not sleep because you need to eat first. In my experience, this is one of the most brutal aspects of getting shredded. Case studies on women show similar negative health effects, plus the addition of menstrual cycle disruptions and the consequences of that, like infertility and bone mineral loss. This case study on a natural.
I think this is a very important point, and it's not to be sexist in any way. And this is something I really stress to my female clients, that getting lean for a woman has a much greater cost. Not that there isn't a negative cost when it comes to males as well, but when it comes to reproduction and your ability to have kids in the future, this is something that is very serious and something you really want to take into consideration before you're pushing your body to these limits. Again, especially as a woman when it comes to your reproductive health.
Figure competitor found that even 1.5 years after the competition was over, she still didn't have her period back. Of course, not everyone is the same here. Another study found that 72% of competitors from both bikini and figure divisions combined had their period back after 3 to 4 months. Some of the variability there could be due to the difference in leanness required for bikini versus figure and whether or not the competitors were comfortable regaining healthy body weight. And sometimes the side effects can get bizarre. It's common for competitors to get complaints that they smell like ammonia or nail polish because caloric balance is so negative that the body turns to protein for energy, which is then converted to ammonia and then excreted through sweat and urine. Even more common is for competitors to do absolutely wild stuff with food. People will watch the Food Network nonstop, watch all kinds of food challenges, hoard cupboards full of junk food, and find things appetizing that really shouldn't taste or smell good. Here's an example.
Let me illustrate how crazy it gets. The smell of dog food makes me hungry. And worse than that, the smell of his crap makes me hungry when I clean it up.
Now, you may be wondering, does this
Deep
mean
water
every
badass,
shredded
John
influencer
Anderson.
wants to eat dog poop? Maybe. It could be that they're secretly suffering just as much as the rest of us, but looking lean for their social media or for their business is simply worth the sacrifice for them. It could also be that they're on performance enhancing drugs, which can make maintaining a lower body fat a little bit easier. However, even with pharmaceutical enhancement, most people will still suffer similar side effects as naturals, except for the testosterone stuff. Another perfectly plausible scenario is that they simply have lower body fat set points than me or you. For example, I'd guess someone like David Lade is able to maintain 6 to 8% body fat without suffering too much. I really doubt David Lade wants to eat dog poop. Based on his photos as a teenager, it seems like he's just able to get lean and stay lean without trying that hard. But this isn't common. Most people have a higher body fat set point than David Lade. Now, I need to back.
I think this goes right along the same lines as being genetically gifted in the fact that you can maintain a leaner physique, be able to build muscle, see that muscle a lot easier. And this can definitely be related to by myself, where I was 125 pounds graduating high school. And once I actually started to figure out and learn a little bit more of the science behind building muscle and nutrition and how I needed to line things up accordingly, I put on weight really quickly, and I was able to work my way up to 165, 170 at the same 5'7" frame. So, for most people thinking going from 125 pounds to 165, that's an insane amount of muscle. And on a frame that's leaner like mine, where I didn't have an excess amount of body fat, just growing up, I was always a skinny, small, short kid. And the thing is, once I was able to dial that in, I was able to see that muscle a lot more just easily compared to someone who has a lot more body fat at that specific same amount of muscle mass.
Backtrack just a bit. Body fat set point theory is the idea that we each have a specific level of body fat that our body will fight to maintain. If we get too far below the set point, it pulls us back up by making us feel hungry and lethargic. And if we get too far above the set point, it pulls us back down by turning hunger down and ramping up metabolism. And while set point theory is a good model for a simple understanding, it originated in the 1950s, and recent models have updated it based on new science. One of the prevailing ones these days is called the dual intervention point model, which says that instead of a single body fat set point, there are actually 2 points that each act as a boundary for a set range where our body is most comfortable.
So I think this is a very interesting point, and I think this is something for anyone who's ever pushed themselves on the top end of the spectrum or the bottom end of the spectrum, whether you're trying to gain a ton of weight and you end up gaining an excess amount of body fat that you do not want, or on the other end of the spectrum, like Jeff's talking about, where you take yourself into a place that is too lean. If you're a person who's ever seen any of these ends of the spectrum, or especially if you're someone who's seen both of them, you can totally relate to this, where you definitely have, like for me, it's about a 10-15 pound window where I start to have kind of the negatives that come about from getting super lean, as well as the negatives that can come about from getting an excessive amount of body fat for my specific frame. So this is a very interesting point, and I think that this is very applicable to each individual person, and based on that, you're going to have a different sort of window of what this looks like.
Hence the dual intervention point model. For example, if I try to get leaner than 8 or 9% body fat, my body will absolutely punish me by skyrocketing my hunger, tanking my metabolism, and giving me all the bad side effects we just talked about. Similarly, if I try to bulk beyond, say, 25% body fat, my body will also fight me by lowering my appetite, boosting my metabolism, sweating like crazy, and so on. But I can get to the lower end of that boundary without too much resistance. And that's the key, finding the lower boundary of your body fat set range. That's what can be sustainable. But this range is different for everyone. David Lade's range might look something like this, whereas someone who's more prone to obesity might have a range that looks more like this. So David Lade could get to 6% body fat and still feel fine, whereas this person might start to feel like death anytime they dip below 12%.
I think this is very key. And I think, again, it goes back to the point that you need to really focus on you. If you're focusing on other people and you're comparing yourself, I think that is one of the biggest downsides of social media because we often look at other physiques and we want to look like that specific physique, even though we might know, and a lot of times we don't even know, that we can't change the way our body looks in terms of the way our muscles insert on our body or the length of our bones or the shape of our bones and anatomy. That's just not possible. We can enhance the amount of muscle that we have with the insertions that we have, with the way our muscles lay in our body, with the length of our bones, but we can never change the specific insertion. So you can't truly look like anyone but you. So that's where focusing on you and comparing yourself to the old version of you and who you were yesterday is the only comparison you really should make. It sounds super cliche, but it'll otherwise lead you down a path that you might not be able to sustain where somebody else might. And to be able to think that you can do the same thing as someone else exactly is just a bit misleading, and it's going to lead you down a path of frustration.
Body fat. So if you want to sustain a lean physique, you should aim for the bottom end of your set range, but not lower. Of course, you can go lower if you want to, for example, if you have a competition or something, but I would still suggest getting back out of there as promptly as you can so you don't exacerbate those negative side effects. Trying to stay shredded can also impair your ability to make progress in size and strength. People who stay shredded year-round have a hard time making any progress. And the longer you stay below your set range, the more likely you'll be to binge, see a weight rebound, and then end up sustaining a less lean physique than if you had just been a bit more conservative with your low end to begin with.
I think this is really important, and also why having a coach, even if you're doing a contest prep and you are a physique competitor, having a coach that is really mindful of your health and cares about you from a perspective first and foremost regarding your health is going to serve you so much in the long run, because they're going to be strategic about how long you're getting to that level of leanness, how it affects you personally, and all overall give you the best sort of outcome possible if it is something that you want. And honestly, a good coach will do everything that Jeff is laying out here as far as giving you what is realistically possible from even a negative aspect by doing a contest prep, or realistically a true clear picture of what contest prep can do to your body. And again, having those negatives in your mind and having the ability to decide if you want to continue to pursue the goal that you have after you become aware of those negatives can be made by yourself. But if you're not aware of that, it's more difficult to make that decision for yourself.
Now, for the record, I'm cutting myself at the moment, and that's basically my goal. Hit the low end boundary of my dual intervention range and try to maintain there for a bit. And of course, it's normal to feel hunger and experience some cravings and even see strength loss at a certain point. Those things are expected to happen, even if you're within your set range. And it's normal for fat loss to be challenging. But once it goes from challenging to all consuming, you'll know. And I'd say that's when it's time to probably reevaluate your goals and why you set them in the first place.
And this is exactly what Jeff is saying here. So you as a person, when you get to that point where like he said, you're really turning and flipping the switch, where things are getting to a point where it's not benefiting you at all from a health or quality of life standpoint, it's literally just to get leaner for a specific look. You have to weigh out what's going on in your life, your experience, your values, and ask yourself, is this something that I actually want to do? And personally, this is why I don't step on stage. This is why I've never stepped on stage. But I know the toll that it will take on my body, my quality of life, my relationships, if I am getting to that level of leanness. And it is personally not something that I, based on my values, want to do. And I would rather stay where Jeff is talking about, which is maintaining a lean physique where I feel good, I have energy, I have strength, but I'm not so hyper focused on the little details that ends up making my hard work and efforts actually feel super fleeting a lot of times, because I don't feel satisfied ever. When I get to that point and I feel that way, then I need to pull back, and I know it's probably a bit too far for me personally.